So now we're looking at row operations on augmented matrices. In this try exercise, we're asked to perform the indicated operations on the given augmented matrix. We're given this matrix here, 5, -2, -2, -2. And just as a reminder, we number the rows from top to bottom. So this is row 1, this is row 2, and this is row 3. Now with our first part of the problem, we're asked to interchange rows 1 and 3. Literally all we do is just swap row 1 for row 3. So our original row 3 is now row 1. So -2, 3, 0, -1. Row 2 stays where it is. So we have 4, -1, -4, 4, and then our original row 1 becomes our row 3. So row 3 is now 5, -2, -2, -2. So literally all we did was we just, when it says interchange, that just means you switch them around. With number 2, we're asked to multiply row 3 by 3. This is just a scalar multiplication. We take every element in row 3 and we multiply it by 3. So our first 2 rows remain the same. So 5, -2, -2, -2, 4, -1, -4, 4. And then with row 3, so it's row 3 times row 3. And what that ends up equaling is -2 times 3 is -6. 3 times 3 is 9. 0 times 3 is 0. And then -1 times 3 is -3. All right, so in this last part of this tried exercise, number 3, we're asked to multiply row 3 by 2 and add that to row 2. So our first 2 rows, or our first and third row, are going to remain the same. It's the second row, because we're adding to row 2, that's going to change. So let's go ahead and let's make this a little bigger so we can do our actual operations. The first row is going to remain the same. It's going to be 5, -2, -2, -2. Now it's row 2 that's going to change because it's add to row 2. It's that final operation. That's the row that's going to change. And just a reminder of what we're going to do. Multiply row 3 by 2. So 2 times row 3 plus our original row 2. So with this now, let's go ahead and do these operations inside our matrix. So multiply row 3 by 2. So -2 times 2. That's our first element in row 3. 2 times row 3. So -2 times 2, or 2 times -2. And then we're adding that to row 2, and our original element in row 2 is 4. So this would be plus 4. Our second element in row 2, 2 times row 3, so 2 times 3, plus the element in the second row, which is -1, so plus -1. Should have left a little more room here. And then last but not least, 2 times row 3 plus row 2 on this side of the augmented matrix. So 2 times row 3, 2 times 0, plus negative 4. So that's just going to be 0 plus negative 4. And then 2 times negative 1 in row 3. 2 times negative 1 plus row 2, which is 4. And then our row 3 remains the same with negative 2, 3, 0, and negative 1. And now we just simplify what we did in that second row. Our first and third rows still remain the same. 5, negative 2, negative 2, negative 2. Now 2 times negative 2 is negative 4. Plus 4 is going to be 0. 2 times 3 is 6 plus negative 1 is 5. 6 minus 1 is 5. 0 plus negative 4, that's just going to be negative 4. 2 times negative 1, that's negative 2 plus 4. That's 4 minus 2, which is just going to be 2. And then again, our third row is negative 2, 3, 0, negative 1. So when we're asked to interchange, that just means to swap those rows. When we're asked to multiply a row by a numerical value, that's called scalar multiplication, and we just simply multiply each element in that row by the number. We're asked to multiply row 3 by 3, so that's what we did with every one of the elements in row 3. And then when we're asked to perform a scalar multiplication and then add it to another row, we're changing the row that it's being added to. So we did that all in one step. We could have written it out separately and had, the new row 3 that we would be using to add to row 2 would be the negative 4, 6, 0, and negative 2 that we have, in the first part of what we did in here. And then we could have just added those two the elements in row 2, kind of like what we did here with our 0 here. Since anything times 0 is 0, I just went ahead and wrote 0. So again, interchange, swap, scalar multiplication, you just multiply every element in the row by that numerical value, in this case 3, with row 3. And when we're asked to perform a scalar multiplication and then add it to another row, then it is the row that we're adding it to that actually changes.